coming up next on Small Town Big Deal.
Rodney gets put to work at a very special country fair and finds an interesting spectator sport when he takes a break.
Then find out what one small town in mid-America has to do with the Iron Curtain and one of the largest sections of the Berlin Wall.
You know, I'm really humbled at the historical significance of this wall and what it means to walk through it. Freedom.
Welcome to Small Town Big Deal.
We've traveled across the country and firmly believe that the people in small towns are the hands that keep America strong.
So join us, Rodney Miller,
And Jann Carl,
as we show you the great things these people do on Small Town Big Deal.
Welcome to Small Town Big Deal. I'm Rodney Miller.
And I'm Jann Carl. You know, I have to admit, one of my favorite things to do in life is to go to the fair. State fair, county fair, any kind of fair.
I love that kind of thing too. But have you ever been to a mountain fair?
I have not.
Well, we're going to Hiawassee, Georgia for the Georgia Mountain Fair.
Do you think they have fried pie? The fair started in 1950. It was 3 days and about 2,000 people came. Well, today it's a 10-day event. 40,000 people come from all over the world.
We're here in Pioneer Village, a place where history is preserved in the coolest of ways. As we get to the old schoolhouse, an original schoolhouse from here in Towns County from the early 1900s, you can almost hear the rustling of students working on their lesson.
You know, 100 years ago, kids learned almost as much out of school as they did in school, like blacksmithing, quilt making, cider making, and wood splitting.
John Ray Parker, teach me how to make some wooden shingles.
I'll do that. I'll show you how they made them back in the 1800s with the tools they used. Man, you're good. But the old folks used to call this a glut. Now we can use the flow. We put a little pressure and see what it'll do. Make the first lick, cinch it up first time.
Boy.
Just hit it lightly.
I think I could get my wife in line with this. Can I borrow this and take it home?
Well, you might
Just
get
kidding.
me in trouble. All right, bump it a little and set it. That's good. Now you're through with that. You can lay
Now I
that
just
down.
do that right there,
The good.
and then I,
All right.
and
Okay. You're getting the board. You're good. We'll put you
finished
to work.
product.
You
So can I
come
get a
back
job
and-
this afternoon after we
You
get done
got
filming?
a job. We'll put you to work.
So you can tell the age of a tree by how many rings?
That's exactly right.
2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to have to take my boots off. Am I going to have to borrow your shoes after that?
Well, you might.
There's nothing like homemade apple cider and homemade fried pies for energy.
Really? You had pie without me?
I know. Well, we all know that you really love pie.
Hey, had you ever made those shingles before?
No, I really haven't.
Because it looked like you had done it a million times.
Thank you. But next we get to meet Stanley Wood, and he runs the fair sawmill.
Stanley Wood? Now, his last name is Wood and he runs the sawmill?
I know. I can't make this up.
Will you teach me how to cut some wood?
Yeah, we'll teach you how.
Let's go.
So I've split wood and I've sawed wood, and now it's time for a little creativity with wood. And Mountain Dan, he's just the guy to help me.
Mountain Dan, you make all this great folk art. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've heard it said you take a block of wood and cut away everything don't look like a bear. But I work off of what I believe to be a gift of God.
And so Georgia Mountain is full of artists, of people who step back in time and show us how it used to be done.
Right, exactly. Folk art is not new. Only thing is, I've found the biggest and the fastest chisel in the world.
Now all that power calls for some powerful nutrition. Yeah, that's right, fudge. We've gotten a little taste of what this fair is all about, but let's talk to the real expert.
Hilda, tell me a little bit about this fair.
This is a real country fair. This is our 62nd year here at the Georgia Mountain Fair, and we've got all kinds of neat things for you to see and do here. We have the great Pioneer Village, live working demonstrations going on, just arts and crafts, music, tree, just about anything you want to do. You can find it here at the Georgia Mountain Fair.
Well, will you take me around and show me?
Yes, come on. We want to find some more history and get some great food. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the pig race is at 1 o'clock.
I don't think I knew that pigs could swim, and they swam fast.
Well, they had a little incentive.
Pig food?
Like a platter of Oreo cookies.
Oreo cookies?
Yeah.
I think I'd swim that fast for Oreo cookies.
Well, you'd have swum that fast, but then you'd want to take one home.
A piglet.
For some reason, I'm wanting a fried bologna sandwich. I've heard there's a unique character in one booth in Pioneer Village. Moonshine, anyone? Luther, you're a moonshiner, right?
Yeah.
How do you make this moonshine?
Well, it's made out of yellow corn meal, and it comes out over here, it's moonshine.
It's moonshine and it's still illegal, is that correct?
As far as I know.
As far as you know. You're not checking into the law too closely today, though. Just for the show, you got any moonshine I can take a look at? And this is real moonshine, made from a real moonshiner's well.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen real moonshine. What did it smell like?
You know, it was really, really strong, and it kind of burnt my nose hairs, actually.
After I cleared my head from the moonshine fumes, I headed off for a lesson in blacksmith.
Pay attention, Rodney.
Okay, I'm paying attention.
Right there in our favorite spot. You too. Closer to the tip. Yeah. So we get that to scroll on over. Now hit towards me. Hit like back blows toward me. Huh? That's looking good. Don't quit your day job.
I won't. A little ice cream to top off the day.
You know, I'm beginning to think, after Rodney has consumed, let's see, fried pie, fudge, ice cream, oh yes, fried bologna sandwich, and who knows what else more, I wonder how his stomach's gonna do on the midway.
You know, my stomach did just fine. We've had a fun day full of history, talent, some great people, lots of fun, and even a few screams and scares. There's no doubt this little town of Hiawassee, Georgia knows how to welcome folks and show them a good time. And that makes this small town a really big deal.
Coming up next, a unique look at one of the greatest leaders of modern history and a huge memorial to him that was moved all the way across the Atlantic.
Welcome back to Small Town Big Deal. We're in Fulton, Missouri, 110 miles west of St. Louis.
The population here is nearly 13,000, and the city's named after Robert Fulton, the inventor of the steamboat.
But the man who really put this town on the map? Winston Churchill.
That's right. Now, I know what you're thinking. Great guy, Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II, but what does he have in common with Fulton, Missouri?
Well, you're about to find out.
It all centers around Westminster College.
Just after World War II, the college president was bold enough to send an invitation to the great Winston Churchill to come and speak.
At the bottom of that invite was a personal request from a very important friend, U.S. President Harry Truman. As they say, the rest is history.
Churchill accepted, and his address became known as the Iron Curtain Speech.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent.
Because of that historic visit, Fulton is now home to some very cool stuff.
The National Churchill Museum, a 17th century church moved all the way from England, and the longest contiguous section of the Berlin Wall anywhere in America.
Every town we go to has its own unique culture, but Fulton, it has a connection with a man who helped change the course of world history.
We met up with Museum Executive Director Dr. Rob Havers, who tells us why Churchill's speech became so famous.
Churchill comes here in 1946 with the embers of World War II still aglow in Europe, and he warns really of another threat, the Soviet Union.
He was really a prophet in that time.
He was, absolutely, and the speech he delivered then really marks the beginning of the next 40 years and what we now know is the Cold War.
I know there's a ton to see. I want to get started.
Yeah, me too.
Museum curator Liz Murphy agreed to give us a private tour.
This day is going to be really special to me because Winston Churchill, he is one of my heroes.
The museum looks at Winston Churchill's life from the very beginning stages all the way through to the Winston Churchill that we know today.
You meet him as a small boy and find out he wasn't the best of students.
And we were surprised to learn what his own father thought of him.
He didn't really think he was going to go very far, and he kind of wrote him off.
But Churchill prevailed. Here he is at the Sandhurst Royal Military Academy.
Not the roly-poly guy we were used to.
No, he is a young, strapping soldier ready for battle.
Speaking of battle, World War I and trench warfare.
We are in a replica British World War I trench. And if you would peek your head up over the trench, you would probably get it shot. So they had to come up with creative ways to peek over and to see what their enemies were doing. They came up with the periscope.
Looking at that authentic footage reminds you of the bravery and the courage that these men had. They were fighting for their freedom, and they were fighting against the man that Churchill referred to as the master of wickedness.
Next, the Gathering Storm Room. Some call it the Hitler Room.
Right here we have a photograph of Adolf Hitler in the way that he pictured himself, as a statesman, as a leader. However, Winston Churchill saw him differently. He was warning people about Hitler as he was coming to power. And to depict this, Rodney, if you'll put your 2 feet right there, stand in Winston Churchill's shoes and look up, you will see how Winston Churchill saw Adolf Hitler.
As a raging madman.
As a raging madman, exactly, yes. Someone who was bent on destruction and just wanted power.
Knowing what we know today, it's really hard to imagine that Churchill had such a difficult time convincing people that Hitler was such a threat.
Next, we made our way through bombed-out London that featured a movie with authentic wartime film clips.
I think this is what Rodney's been waiting to see.
This is.
Is that the chair that Churchill sat in?
The chair that Winston Churchill sat in when he spoke in 1946.
Wow.
And the podium that Winston Churchill spoke behind. I wouldn't sit in it. You could almost feel the history, but not quite.
I'm almost sitting in the chair that Winston Churchill sat.
You're not supposed to touch anything in the museum.
Well, it was just sitting there. All I needed was a cigar.
And security.
On that historic day, the Flutonians went the whole 9 yards. Tons of homemade banners and a parade.
It was a great day for Fulton, both the President of the United States and the previous Prime Minister of Great Britain in one town.
Obviously, it shows how Churchill was loved so much here in America. You know, my favorite Churchill quote is, "Never in the history of human conflict have so many owed so much to so few."
Our final stop showed us the private side of Churchill as a husband and a father.
And a man who even found time for hobbies. He was a painter. The museum has 3 of his original paintings.
I can't believe how much we saw today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and it was actually only half of what we have here.
Wow, and the amazing thing is all this was underground.
That's right. You won't believe what's above our heads.
Before the museum existed, Westminster College was looking for a way to commemorate Churchill's visit, but they weren't just thinking a plaque or a statue, they were thinking something big.
This wonderful church, St. Mary Aldermanbury, partially destroyed in the London Blitz and slated for demolition, was brought from London in the 1960s.
How exactly do you move a church from London to Fulton, Missouri?
Bring it across the Atlantic, stone by stone, brick by brick. Incendiary bombs went through the roof, destroyed all the woodwork, but left the outer walls largely intact. And it's those outer walls and the bell tower that are brought from London.
What had to be done to reconstruct the church was nothing short of amazing.
These are some of the 7,000 stones that were numbered and then shipped across the Atlantic here to Fulton and then put all back together.
All of the columns survived, but some of the tops had to be recreated to match the original.
They got an original Christopher Wren pulpit, had it shipped over, and installed it.
Every one of these panes was hand-blown by a company in West Virginia to look just like they were in the 17th century.
And these are the steps from the 12th century. They used to lead to a crypt, but now up to the bell tower. Not the bells, another ladder, okay? It's a little shaky. There are 5 bells, and they chime here on the campus every quarter hour! Wow!
But the grandest thing of all is this magnificent organ.
The organ was built by a man who had been a firefighter in London during the Blitz and saw the church burn.
Wow, nice job.
Thank you, thank you.
Dave Newton is a student here at Westminster.
Tell me, Dave, what does it feel like to play something like this?
This is the most powerful instrument in the world, so obviously it's, you know, it sends chills down my spine, and there's really no other experience like it.
Really cool.
I heard the organ, and I knew you would be up here. That was beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. So we've seen the museum, we've seen the church, got to get our coats and go see the most recent piece of history.
Let's go.
Coming up next, Berlin comes to Fulton, Missouri.
Dr. Havers, this is really impressive.
Rodney gets an English lesson. NT, that is.
Welcome back to Small Town Big Deal. We're exploring the National Churchill Museum in Fulton, Missouri, which includes a church moved all the way from England. What could be next?
Well, if Churchill's Iron Curtain speech delivered here marked the beginning of the Cold War, what marked the end? The fall of the Berlin Wall.
Wow. Dr. Havers, this is really impressive.
People are tremendously impressed that they can come here to Westminster College, to Missouri, and see 8 contiguous sections of the Berlin Wall.
On that side of the wall, people couldn't even touch it. This side, they could come out and paint it, and the oppressed world and the free world.
When the Berlin Wall was coming down, Churchill's granddaughter, Edwina Sands, who's an artist, saw a great opportunity because she'd always wanted to create something special to honor her grandfather's visit to Fulton.
So she goes to Berlin, persuades the East Germans to part with 8 contiguous sections, and does so at a time when pieces of the Berlin Wall are selling for between $60,000 to $200,000. She persuades them to give them to her.
She titled the piece The Breakthrough Sculpture, which allows each visitor to step through the wall by using the silhouettes she carved out.
You know, I'm really humbled at the historical significance of this wall and what it means to walk through it. Freedom.
Between 1961 and 1989, 136 people lost their lives just trying to get to the other side of this wall.
If you make a trip to Fulton to see the wall, you'll be part of a long list of important visitors. In 1990, Ronald Reagan dedicated the sculpture.
Other dignitaries include former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and former President of Poland, Lech Wałęsa.
It's beginning to feel a little bit like Berlin in the middle of winter, so if we go inside, we have a bit of a surprise for you.
I like surprises.
Let's go. All right, thank you.
Hot tea.
I think it's high tea.
Well, pardon me.
This is a high tea selection that we serve in the museum to special guests. Classic English afternoon fare, empire biscuits, mince pies, petit fours, homemade scones.
I am so hungry. And Dr. Havers just keeps talking about the food. I mean, when are we going to get to eat?
And Devonshire cream, watercress sandwiches, cucumber sandwiches, a wonderful spread.
We found out they offer up this royal treatment to anybody who wants to come and do something extra special at the museum. But I'm thinking Rodney and high tea?
This is going to be my very first high tea. I wonder if anybody's going to be able to tell. What do you call these?
Scones.
Scones?
Scones.
These are Empower?
These are empire biscuits.
What was it called?
It's a petit four.
A what? And the scones are just kind of like fancy biscuits?
No, I am sure, Rodney, that nobody could tell this was your very first high tea.
Okay, maybe it was a little obvious.
Truth be told, it was my first high tea as well, and I wasn't quite sure how to use that fancy teapot.
Now this is not what I make my tea with at home. Mine, I heat mine in the microwave.
Does it make you feel good being from Britain that you're kind of telling the story of Churchill here in America?
Being a Brit and talking about Churchill in this country is an honor and a pleasure. And Winston Churchill is revered almost more in this country often than he is back home in Britain.
Do you feel that the museum is sort of a hidden gem?
It's a constant battle to get it better known. Whenever anybody comes here, they're always amazed to learn there is this wonderful National Churchill Museum that brings to life history and Winston Churchill in the fashion that you experience today.
A toast to more people learning about this hidden gem.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You know, in the beginning of the episode, I thought you did really well with all that mountain man stuff, but the high society, high tea thing, not so much.
Yeah, that's not my cup of tea.
Well, that's good.
I'm kind of a steak and potatoes kind of guy, you know?
Yeah, I kind of knew that about you. You know, we get to go to a lot of really fun places, and we encourage you to go too, if you can, the Georgia Mountain Fair, support their fair, and the National Churchill Museum.
I am definitely going back there.
I knew you would. And we hope you go to our website, smalltownbigdeal.com, and check out our online store.
And get your own Small Town Big Deal cool stuff.
Absolutely.
Join us again next week when once again we celebrate the great stories from across America.
Rodney, you call them Empower biscuits. Like, no, Empire, like British Empire. You just want empowerment.
So I messed up a whole bunch of times?
A few.
It's really not like me.
Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II, a
Great States.
giant. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's my line, man. Get more excited. Well, we're about to show you.
We're about to show you.
Like when you order patty melts and stuff.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. I can't believe it. Sorry, did I hit you too hard? You're not supposed to touch anything in the museum. I can't. You knew I was going to hit you and you still jumped.